You mentioned today, I want to dedicate tonight's event to Mr. Daniel Ellsberg and his heroism as a whistleblower, as a person that ended the Pentagon attacks in Vietnam by releasing the Pentagon Papers, and was a peace activist, a true leader in the community, published multiple books. I saw him at rallies, had a chance to interview him. I even put a couple of my interviews and his speech as part of the Eventbrite, so people can get a sense of the man and his character and his thoughts on nuclear weapons. Before we start, one of the things I wanted to mention is I'm Iranian American, talking about nuclear technology and NSA and all sorts of topics that most people would find hard to talk about, even as Americans. And I just want to say how appreciative I am of the right to freedom of speech, to be able to bring in this diverse set of audience. I wish more places in the world would allow their people to speak up, their bloggers, their journalists, their commentators, and not have media controlled by the state. Tonight, we're going to hear from one of the victims of Hiroshima, Mr. Tanemori, and we have a set of wonderful comedians, speakers to keep you engaged. Thank you so much for supporting us in these past 10 years, attending our events. It means a lot. As an Iranian American, it's also for me important to say that Mahsa and Mahsa Amini's death is coming up. She was killed by the Iranian police in September. And for September 16th, there's International Day of Protest and solidarity with women of Iran for women, life, freedom. And I think if you can, please participate in it. Women's rights are human rights. They can't be denied. Women have the right to education. They have the right for wearing whatever they want, then they shouldn't be forced under an authoritarian regime. So please consider joining us on September 16th in San Francisco and across the US and the world in solidarity with women of Iran. So tonight's event is about Hiroshima, and Hollywood made a big production and a movie for Oppenheimer. And I think that only showed you the first half, what nuclear bombs are capable of and how they're made. But it doesn't show you the impact of those bombs. It doesn't talk to you about the kids that were left without a father, without a mother, without their sisters. It doesn't portray that at all. So unfortunately, it's one-sided. It's trying to whitewash someone's background and say, yeah, well, he cared. At the end, he was really sorry about it. Well, he killed 160,000 people in Hiroshima, another 90,000 in Nagasaki, brought us nuclear technology. And I swear, every place that there's nuclear energy is a wasteland, because the waste that's generated from Fukushima, from Chernobyl, from 3 Mile, all of these are places, even now Zaporizhzhia, that's controlled by Russia, are nuclear disasters waiting to happen or have happened. So I'm not a fan of nuclear technology. I think it's great for medicine, but outside of that, I don't believe it should be used for creating bombs, for creating weapons, even for creating energy, because what happens with the spent fossil fuel, the spent uranium, it has to be put in a big mine underneath some rocks and wait for it to decade for hundreds and hundreds of years for it to be able to be handled. And this nuclear waste stays with us. Right now, Fukushima is going to be releasing something like 1.3 million tons of nuclear water waste. Now, granted, it's diluted, but soon we're going to have our fish a little neon colored, probably out of the Pacific, and that should concern you. How we treat the environment should concern you. I went to Ukraine and, I saw Chernobyl and what it had done and the ruins that it had created. And it's really unfortunate. Now imagine what happened to people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where the US experienced with the atomic bomb, or even in our own country with the Trinity test, where people were caught downwind from Mexicans and Americans, and about 46 states were impacted by the Trinity test. We've done over 1,000 nuclear tests. You know what frightens me today? What frightens me is the intersection of AI, nuclear weapons, and autonomous weapon systems. We're not too far away from that. Could you imagine an authoritarian regime or countries that wage war as their business model have access to all three of those things under ruthless leaders? Who's going to control it? If we don't do something to stop this intersection of AI, autonomous weapons, and nuclear weapons, we're going to be giving our hands to robots that could potentially destroy us or save us from ourselves. You know, right now, North Korea has nuclear technology, nuclear weapons that are pointed to the Pacific, to California. U.S. has got, I don't know, just after Russia, 6,000 or so nuclear bombs. China is full of it. France, UK, Pakistan, and India. Any of these conflicts, if they blow up, is going to destroy a large portion of humanity. So those are my concerns. And what I want to say is that Hollywood feeds the war machine. If you can imagine a 3 or 4 headed monster with a bunch of tentacles, one of those tentacles being military, the other one being the Hollywood producing videos and films, glorifying marvels and, you know, conflicts and wars, then feeding the tech industry and the defense industry, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, the Raytheons, getting people excited that the only way we can settle our conflict is through war and through violence. How stupid is that? I mean, you know, how amateur and childish is that to say, you know, we can't have our diplomats do the work, so we're going to go bomb the other guy. And I don't think Hiroshima bombing should have ever happened. I don't think there's any justification to kill hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. And the US, of course, is always looking for the next war. And that's a big concern. I hope that doesn't happen. We have plenty of conflicts today that we need to solve, especially in places like Ukraine, in Sudan, in Africa, in Nigeria, in Algeria, all these places. And then look at the migration that these wars and conflicts are causing. Look at the migrants from Syria, from Iraq, that ended up going to Europe. Do you think they wanted to leave their homelands? Do you think people want to get up and leave where they were born just because there's a war? Of course not. So we're waiting for a couple of people to join the call right now. But for now, I'm going to move on to my dear Reverend Dorsey Blake. Mr. Blake, Mr. Tanamori is having some connection issues. If you don't mind jumping in early, and I'll try to get a hold of him and see what the issue is.
No, we're fine.